Now, the first step in eradicating this crime is awareness. Go see Sound of Freedom.
And I've often felt it. I've sat there and I have felt the knife slipped firmly in between my shoulder blades and tried to have it shoved through the other side through my heart.
For over 2 decades, Mel Gibson has kept his mouth shut about the strangest whispers in Hollywood. Now, he isn't just talking, he's unleashing. His voice, raw and deliberate, has sliced through the thick curtain of silence that drapes over the industry, and what he's saying sounds more like a horror film than a memoir. According to him, there is a conspiracy of control, an invisible chain of power stretching across both film and music, kept alive through violent rituals, backroom deals, and acts too disturbing to say aloud without trembling. We have to ask ourselves, if Gibson has carried these secrets for 20 years, what finally pushed him to throw them into the light now?
That some of your worst nightmares were real at the time, and you think, Now this is what I mean by actually...
Gibson's claims paint Hollywood as less of a dream factory and more of a spider's web where careers and lives dangle, waiting for the next predator. He hints at a hierarchy, shadowy figures who sit above the red carpets and flashing cameras, moving pieces around like pawns. He describes a world where demons walk in expensive shoes, where the smiles on award show stages conceal transactions made in fear and in blood. He's not talking about bad contracts or greedy producers. He's pointing at something darker, something ritualistic, something that forces us to rethink every celebrity scandal we've ever shrugged off as gossip. How deep does this rabbit hole go, and who are the players Gibson wants us to see for who they really are? The first name that echoes when we sift through his words is Sean Diddy Combs. Once hailed as a mogul who reshaped hip-hop, Diddy now finds himself shackled with indictments so serious they could put him behind bars for life. Prosecutors accuse him of running his empire like a criminal syndicate, racketeering, coercion, and the notorious freak-offs. These weren't just wild parties at glittering hotels. Insiders insist they were orchestrated performances of power, marathon encounters fueled by substances and intimidation, designed less for pleasure than for dominance. In court filings, prosecutors describe Diddy not as a host but as a director, telling people where to go, what to do, and recording it all as insurance. Gibson's cryptic warnings about demons now sound uncomfortably close to these testimonies. Was he trying to warn us about men like Combs all along?
Yeah, very, very hard. Very hard to be, you have to choose what level of integrity you're coming in at. And
we've seen the defense fight tooth and nail, arguing that Diddy has been singled out, that prosecutors have twisted a century-old law with racist origins to make an example out of him. They argue the Mann Act, born in 1910 and once known as the White Slave Traffic Act, was historically weaponized to police black men while supposedly protecting white women. His lawyers have been adamant no white person has ever been the target of a remotely similar prosecution. It's a fiery claim, and in another time, it might have swayed public opinion. But in the courtroom, witness after witness has walked to the stand describing hotel nights that lasted 3 days, where refusal wasn't an option and saying no meant losing financial support, security, or worse. The picture painted is chilling, one of an empire built not just on records and branding, but on compliance enforced with fear.
And this is the flight where Diddy said to her,
showed her the video, showed her the freak-off video.
He showed her a video of a freak-off that she participated in and said, if you don't participate in another freak-off when we get to New York, I'm gonna put this video out. I'm gonna send it to your mother.
And that's coercion.
She testified to that.
If the jury
if they believed her,
yeah.
That's coercion. They would have Cassie.
The details have been almost too surreal to process. Women known only by pseudonyms describe being ushered into suites stocked with cash, male performers, and substances meant to dull the senses. One testified that Combs would tell her directly, "You're not getting tired on me, let's finish strong." Others allege he filmed them in their most vulnerable moments and later waved the recordings like weapons, a promise of exposure if they ever dared to step out of line. Prosecutors call these encounters commercial performances. His defense insists they were just private indulgences. But the testimonies have echoed back to Gibson's warnings of rituals, events where human dignity is stripped away in service of something else. Was this what he saw behind the polished gates of Hollywood mansions? And yet, it isn't just Diddy's name that surfaces in the storm. In whispers that refuse to fade, Oprah Winfrey's comes up too. Known to millions as the Queen of Empathy, the daytime titan who built an empire on connection, her silence on certain matters now feels like a thunderclap. When the scandal of Harvey Weinstein tore through Hollywood, some asked why Oprah, who had stood beside him at gala after gala, did not speak sooner. Steele accused her outright of knowing for decades and saying nothing. And when Dave sat across from her on her own show, talking about the suffocating grip of Hollywood's controllers, many fans later replayed that interview with new eyes. When Oprah asked him if he had lost his mind, viewers now insist she wasn't naive. She was signaling allegiance to the very machine Dave was trying to describe. Could Gibson's talk of demons have included the smiling face America trusted most?
And then what's the stuff that's happening with Wendy Williams? Do you think this is all connection to?
Of course.
There are even whispers, rumors whispered in green rooms and circulated at after parties, that Oprah herself has appeared at gatherings connected to Diddy's notorious circles. Nothing proven, no hard photographs splashed on the tabloids, but the mere suggestion rattles the mind. Could one of the most powerful women in media have been within reach of those so-called freak-offs? Or is her silence the kind of silence that keeps careers afloat in an industry where speaking too loudly can end you overnight? We've watched her feud with figures like Monique explode into public spats with accusations of betrayal and sabotage. We've seen her platform, a Brazilian healer, later charged with exploiting hundreds of women. Every time her name is linked to the wrong people, she slips through unscathed, her empire intact. Is that luck? Or protection from the very conspiracy Gibson swears exists? We can't ignore how Gibson himself was treated when he first let hints slip years ago. Back in the late 90s, he gave an interview where he spoke about the demons walking Hollywood's red carpets. He said he'd had paranoid suspicions, that he doubted his own sanity, only to realize years later that his worst nightmares were real. He was mocked, branded unstable, written off as a man spiraling out of control. But as case after case now exposes the rot underneath Hollywood's glossy exterior, his words feel less like ramblings and more like coded warnings. Was he silenced deliberately, drowned out with scandal and controversy so his testimony would be easy to dismiss?
Are you surprised by the evidence that's already coming out in the criminal trial?
No, I'm not surprised. I experienced some of those things. Witnessed violence.
Now, with Diddy's trial unraveling detail after detail about coercion, intimidation, and secret recordings, Gibson's 20-year-old whispers throb like a ticking time bomb. We wonder, how many more of Hollywood's royalty were aware, complicit, or worse? Did they attend, did they enable, or did they simply turn their heads and count the profits? And when Gibson described rituals, was he referring to the freak-offs, the coercive marathons, the very events prosecutors are now cataloging piece by piece?
People I don't think realized was he had cameras all over the place, unbeknownst to them. And now he has all that footage, supposedly. This is what I'm told. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens if, you're a huge, iconic, TV star or movie star, and you're in some very...
Who's getting the money, though?
It's impossible to miss the timing. Gibson resurfaces his warnings just as Diddy faces life in prison, just as victims speak of being pressured with threats and recordings, just as Oprah's name is dragged back into conversations about silence and complicity. Mel Gibson's words from 2 decades ago now ring like prophecy. Were we too blind, too eager to believe in the glitter, to see the monster staring at us from behind the camera? And if the web stretches from Diddy to Oprah to the highest levels of power, how many more names are waiting in the shadows, shielded by fame and fortune, praying the dam doesn't break wider than it already has? Because what we're seeing now, the arrests, the testimonies, the old interviews being replayed, is only the surface. The web of secrets, as Gibson warned, goes darker still.
I don't know this, but it just seems very suspicious when you go through and you look at in the history of different people that can make you go away if listen, I've worried about some of the things that I talk about on my show.
Gibson's revelations force us to widen the lens. This isn't just about a fallen hip-hop mogul or a media icon whose silence raises questions. It's about a system, a machine that feeds on secrecy. Hollywood has long been described as a dream factory, but Gibson suggests it is more like a cult, an invisible brotherhood where silence is currency and fear is the lock on the vault. We've watched stars vanish from the spotlight, careers collapse overnight, and scandals evaporate as if they never happened. How many of those collapses were accidents of fame, and how many were deliberate sacrifices to protect the network that thrives behind the scenes? The pattern is impossible to ignore. From the old casting couch scandals buried in the studio era to the empire-shattering allegations against Harvey Weinstein, the industry has always seemed capable of shielding its most powerful until the dam finally breaks. Oprah herself was accused by Seal of knowing about Weinstein's behavior for decades. His words were blunt. You'd heard the rumors, but you had no idea. The meme he posted showed her kissing Weinstein's cheek, a moment once seen as glamorous but now read like complicity. Gibson's claim of demons in the system suddenly feels less like paranoia and more like a diagnosis of the culture itself. We call it the cult of silence because that's what it looks like. Careers are currency, reputations are traded like chips, and anyone who refuses to play the game gets labeled unstable, difficult, or washed up. Dave said it plainly on Oprah's own show when he explained the pressures of success. When you're a guy that generates money, people have a vested interest in controlling you. Instead of sympathy, he got a raised eyebrow and the suggestion that he might have lost his mind. Fans now insist that was the exact moment Oprah revealed which side she stood on. Could it be that Gibson, Dave, and countless others weren't unraveling, they were resisting?
Hey, will you help me? I want to hear your music, so I come over there and I play the music. And he's sitting there, just looking at me, like waiting. Okay. So then my assistant was like, you know, he wants to hang out with you next week. And I was like, for what? He's like, I think he's trying to f*** you. That's what my assistant said. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I get it. So now no more communication.
The gilded cage of Hollywood offers riches beyond imagination, but the bars are stronger than steel. We've seen stars like Monique clash with Oprah, alleging betrayal and sabotage when she refused to play along with expectations. We've seen a healer once celebrated on Oprah's platform, John of God, later exposed for exploiting hundreds of women. Again and again, the cycle repeats. Elevation, silence, and then when the truth finally claws its way into daylight, disavowal. How many more names sit untouched because the machine keeps running interference?
Trump pardoning Diddy will create another Epstein for him. It would be a nightmare. And last and certainly not least, the GOP is already struggling with female voters. And they're not all lefties. There are young conservative women who aren't in love with Trump or MAGA. There are. And this will not help. It's very clear. We all saw the videotape of him beating the hell out of Cassandra Ventura.
And then there's Gibson himself, a man whose career was derailed not just by his own controversies, but by a tide of backlash that seemed relentless. He was called crazy, antisocial, paranoid. But what if some of that was a calculated strike? If he really was on the verge of speaking openly about rituals, control, and manipulation, then discrediting him would have been the perfect way to neutralize the threat. A whisper campaign here, a scandal amplified there, and suddenly the man's warnings about demons could be dismissed as drunken rambling. Was Gibson's downfall less about his own faults and more about silencing a whistleblower before he could bring down the house?
They were referred to me as Wild King Nights. And what a Wild King Night was when him and a guest would go to a hotel room or be at his home, his bedroom, and they would have intimate gatherings. I would have to go and prep that hotel room, which consisted of baby oil Astroglide.
We can't overlook how perfectly the allegations against Diddy echo Gibson's imagery. Prosecutors claim the mogul orchestrated elaborate encounters, manipulating people into acts they didn't want, recording them, then using those recordings as leverage. One woman testified through tears that she tried to refuse but felt trapped by financial dependency. Others describe being sedated to make it through endless nights that left them broken. If this isn't the behavior of someone hiding behind the mask of fame and fortune, then what is? Gibson said the demons walk the red carpets. Perhaps he wasn't being metaphorical.
Did you ever have the opportunity where you got invited and you said no to it?
Hell yeah.
What was the consequences when you said no?
Puffy invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while. Go there and he's sitting around just looking. I'm like, okay, what's the material you want to work on? He's just looking at me.
We should also remember the strange phenomenon of stars who seem to vanish when they ask too many questions. Mariah Carey's breakdown, Martin Lawrence shouting in the streets that people were after him, Dave walking away from millions. Each of these moments was framed as madness. But what if, as Dave himself suggested, these were reactions to an environment designed to crush dissent? The industry loves to call its casualties unstable, but maybe, just maybe, instability is the price of refusing to bend to the machine.
Same thing for Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the interesting thing about the Epstein and the theory about Epstein is we know he filmed people for sure on that island. He has a lot of movies, a lot of films of people that are very, very powerful political figures, and entertainers, business people. So, do you really believe that Jeffrey Epstein himself? And of course not. Of course not. Yeah.
The whispers of rituals have haunted Hollywood for decades, and Gibson's illusions give them a chilling new weight. These aren't the glossy charity galas or red carpet award ceremonies we see on television. Insiders speak of secret gatherings where stars are tested, pressured to cross lines that bind them permanently to the system. Participation becomes both an initiation and a leash. Those who comply are rewarded with fame and fortune. Those who resist risk losing everything. The rituals, whether symbolic or physical, are said to blur the line between indulgence and entrapment, forging bonds of complicity that ensure silence.
They needed to show that there was an agreement, that the organization knew what it was doing, that it was an enterprise. not in law, but in fact, that people understood the object of the enterprise, which was to promote Sean Combs and his brands and sort of fulfill any deviant desires he may have had, and then to cover up any crimes committed over the course of fulfilling those desires.
The concept of initiation has long been tied to power structures, from ancient secret societies to modern fraternities, and Hollywood appears no different. Here, the initiation doesn't simply celebrate entry, it enforces obedience. By making celebrities complicit in acts they could never admit publicly, the system ensures they have no way out. Careers rise meteoric after such passages, feeding the rumor that success is not just about talent or hard work, but about the willingness to pay a hidden price. The more public the star, the more private the chains.
That was all the people that went to the puffy parties. That was all the people that did all those things thinking that there was never going to be a consequence for what they were doing. Got punked out and pimped out by some greater desire. You shouldn't have a greater desire than being a man. So I believe that's a big problem with a lot of the actors out there because they get fluid. And next thing you know, once you go fluid, it's gone.
Psychologically, the toll of these supposed rights is devastating. Stars who break under the weight often spiral in ways that the public misreads as eccentricity or meltdown. Dave hinted at pressures that felt orchestrated, as though stress was being deliberately piled on to keep him compliant. Mariah Carey's breakdown, Britney Spears' public unraveling, countless actors vanishing into obscurity. Each is recast through this lens as the potential fallout of refusing to play along or failing to carry the burden of what they had witnessed. What looks like madness might instead be the echo of trauma from experiences fans will never be allowed to see.
I'm sorry, I'm just I'm in this moment right now. This is crazy. Sorry. People don't really know how much what it does to you when something that you love is taken from you and thrown away like it don't even matter, and then they move on with their lives and you're stuck. You're stuck during those years. You're still stuck 21 years later.
Though this also explains the eerie sameness in the stories that surface. Victims described feeling coerced, confused, or incapacitated into submission, then bound by fear of exposure. Rituals, whether real or symbolic, thrive on that sense of helplessness. It's not just about indulgence, it's about breaking the will. Once someone has been pushed past their moral threshold, silence becomes the only option, and silence is the currency that sustains the cult of power. The cameras capture diamonds and gowns, but behind the closed doors of mansions and hotel suites, the rituals leave scars invisible to the public eye. If true, the question isn't why so many stars have stumbled, but how any of them survive at all. The rituals, the secrecy, the binding through shame and fear, these may be the unspoken dues of Hollywood's kingdom. Gibson's warnings cast the entire industry in a new light, not as a community of artists, but as a labyrinth designed to test loyalty and control. For every star we see shining on stage, how many are haunted by the cost of their initiation? How many keep smiling because they know silence is the only way to hold on to the crown?
Go back to that 50 Cent post, and I'm gonna tell you why 50 is literally a diabolical genius.
And if Oprah is part of that machine, as some speculate, then her influence is almost unthinkable. She has the power to elevate careers or leave them in ashes. She can take a fringe healer and crown him a miracle worker. She can sit across from a comedian begging for understanding and turn his confession into a punchline. Even Monique claims roles meant for her were redirected straight into Oprah's hands. How much of this is business and how much is control? The stakes become clearer when we consider what Gibson has risked. By resurfacing these warnings now, he's shining a light into the corners most of Hollywood prays will remain dark. Diddy may be the face on trial today, but the accusations suggest he didn't operate alone. He had assistants, staff, even executives helping arrange hotel rooms, moving money, delivering substances, ensuring silence. That's not a lone wolf. That's an enterprise, and where there is one enterprise, there are others. So we are left with the unsettling conclusion that Gibson's 20-year-old warnings weren't just rants, they were a map pointing straight toward the gilded cage, the cult of silence, the empire of control. And if this map is real, then the scandal surrounding Diddy and the whispers about Oprah are only the first landmarks. There are more names hidden in the shadows, more reputations polished to perfection on the outside while rotting underneath. If Gibson is right, then this is only the beginning. The question is, who will be brave enough to step forward next? And how much longer can Hollywood keep its darkest secrets buried behind the glittering lights? Drop your theories in the comments below, because this story is far from over. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and never trust the smile on the red carpet.